Regular Show, one of the more iconic shows televised on Cartoon Network. And because of its popularity, there were some games created for the show, and more specifically, I'm talking about Regular Show Grudge Ball Enter the Chaos Sphere, a mobile game, which technically new players can't download anymore, but here's the interesting part. If you have access to the original account you downloaded it on, you can just go into your app history and just download it again. And luckily, I'm one of those people, so today I'll be 100%ing it, descending through every floor, unlocking every character, and completing all of the achievements within the game. Oh, and quickly, about 87% of people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed, so if you end up enjoying the video, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Okay, let's begin. The game starts off with a cutscene where a laser cuts through a wall and we see these cryostasis chambers in the back. And in these chambers, we see Benson, Rigby, and Mordecai. And to explain what's happening here, the game first gives us a flashback, going back 1,000 years, where it seemed like Pops, Skips, Mordecai, Muscle Man, Rigby, and Benson were having a dodgeball match. And from the dialogue, we find out that this was Pops' idea. It was supposed to be a dodgeball match to build their bonds for Team Spirit Day. And while explaining the story, this is actually also the tutorial for the game, where when you have the dodgeball, you can do one of three moves. The first of which we learn is passing the ball to one of your teammates. And in Pops' exercise, he wanted us to compliment the teammate that we passed the ball to. But Rigby immediately starts complaining, saying that this is lame, initiating an argument with Mordecai, who wants to get this over with and says that he should just do what Pops is saying. But Rigby's also rightfully angry because he says they've been doing this for hours. And this leads to our next tutorial tip, which is basically the characters move on their own, so we only have to worry about passing, throwing, and blocking. And the argument with Rigby kind of led to Mordecai getting mad, so he asks Skips to pass the ball to him. And this is where we learn the second movement of actually throwing the ball at the opponent. But this gets Pops worried because the game has now started to break bonds rather than build them. And this might seem boring to you, but I promise this is all important for the story later on. But back to the game, as Rigby threw the ball back at us, if we tap right at the perfect time, we can block. And then if we tap again when an exclamation mark appears, we actually do a counter attack. And that's actually good for two reasons. One, it blocks the entire damage that you're supposed to take. And two, it deals damage to the opponent. And judging by Mordecai's dialogue here, you can see that the game had become pretty serious, which led to the third thing that you can do with the ball if you have it in your hand. And this aura thing that you can see around Mordecai is a superpower. I'll explain more on how you're able to get that when we get to the actual games, but for now, all you need to know is that to use it, you just hold down the screen, which brings up this bar, and you want to get into those pinkish colors. And Mordecai there was about to do his attack, but then we went back to the present, where we see someone warm up Mordecai in the cryostasis chamber and bring him out of it. And falling out, Mordecai asks, "Did it work?" Which then we see Skips saying, "Welcome to the future," in the year 3015. And this actually also tells you that this game came out in 2015, and that's why we had that 1,000-year flashback. But getting deeper into the story, Mordecai and Rigby ask Skips what this place is, and he explains that this is the Chaos Sphere, and they're gonna have to fight their way through past every floor. And Mordecai exclaims that whatever happens, to just remember that they're there for a friend, kind of leaving it a little mysterious as to what's actually happening in the game. But this leads us to floor 1, which is our very first real battle. And you might be wondering who the opponents are that we're going up against, and I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea either. I think they're specifically original characters made for the game. But anyways, the countdown starts for the game to start, and here I didn't know that I was supposed to grab the ball, so the opponents ended up getting it first. And immediately we got this pop-up for boosters, which are basically these floaty things that give you additional boosts throughout the game. Some do more damage, some heal you, some make the ball faster, and some make your power-up meter fill up. So you can get a little bit of everything with the boosters. But the most important thing in this game is the power-ups, especially Skips' power-up, because he hacks into the system, punching the dodgeball into the air and shielding two of our teammates. And this shield basically prevents one entire hit from hitting one of our characters. And you might have noticed there that the shield only covered Mordecai and Rigby. And again, if you look at the power bar, there's the pink, purple, and then the black area. If you get it in the tiniest pink area, you get a perfect superpower, and in Skips' case, that would have shielded all three of our teammates. But since I actually only got it in the purple area, it only shielded two of our teammates. And even worse right there, since I only got it into the black area, it only shielded one of our teammates. And you don't always have to shoot for the pink area in the middle. The purple is usually good enough as well, but getting it in the black area can sometimes be a waste of a power-up. And Rigby's superpower, like you might have seen earlier, is just a beam that shoots directly in front of him. So if lined up correctly, it can do an insane amount of damage. And winning that first match, we unlocked our first achievement, achievement, which was upgrading a character, and then we also got the second achievement for beating the first floor. And touching more on the achievements, since we are going for that 100%, there's 14 in total, most of which we unlock just playing regularly, but there are some annoying ones like maxing out a character and then also unlocking all the characters in the game that can be a little time consuming, but we'll get to those later, because for now I still have some more explaining to do on how the game works, because you might see me just passing the ball back and forth between my characters, and this is the main strategy that you use to fill up the power-up bars. And there's actually some pretty cool combos that I'll start mentioning as we get further into the game, because for now we only have the starting 3 characters, of which Skips is important and stays on the team basically for the rest of the game, but Mordecai and Rigby do eventually get replaced by some better characters. And as we entered the 3rd floor, we saw this pop up for the speed wall, and usually each floor will have a different modifier within the level, and this floor's modifier was the speed wall that can either make the dodgeball slower or faster if it touches it. Oh, and quickly before we get too far into the story, if you've never played this game or don't know the story at all, let me know in the comments who you think the final boss is going to be, because I'm curious to see if anyone will get it, because I had some guesses of my own, but when they revealed the boss at the end, I was kind of mind boggled. But enough foreshadowing, because after beating floor 3, we unlocked the achievement for having 100 passes and then also winning 3 matches in a row, meaning we completed a total of 4 achievements out of the 14. And I don't think I mentioned it, or maybe I have, but this game has 30 floors in total. And of course, as you've already seen, every time we win on a floor, we descend downwards onto the next. But the opposite also happens, that if we lose on a floor, we go upwards 1 floor. So it can be pretty detrimental to lose, but we don't run into that problem too much, as I kind of already knew most of the best strategies for the game. But there was one level way later on that kind of caught me off guard. Oh, and I don't think I've shown it yet, but when you land on the small pink area in the power meter, the characters do a pretty cool animation. They enter this sort of super powered state, which right after they perform their ability, and in this case Mordecai actually one-shot the last character on the other team. But moving on to floor 5, this is actually a pretty important floor, because one introduces these rebound barriers that are pretty annoying for a floor modifier, because they block half of the middle area, and if you accidentally throw your ball into the rebound barrier and it hits one of your own characters, it deals damage. And floor 5 was actually getting pretty intense, because Skips had lost most of his health while the entire other team was still in the green, but then I once again performed an awesome superpower attack with Mordecai and ended up one-shotting 2 of their characters. And that right there is actually why Skips' shield is so important, because in this game you could get one-shot very easily if the correct modifiers or superpower is used. But after we took down the last opponent of floor 5, we unlocked Muscle Man, one of the main 3 characters we use in this game, because if you look right here, each character gives you an additional team buff if they're your team leader. And Muscle Man specifically, when he's your team leader, he gives you a boost to your rage meter, giving it, I believe, a 200% or at least close to that for the speed which the rage meter fills up. So the decision I made was taking Rigby off the team, replacing him with Mordecai, and then putting Muscle Man at the team leader position instead of Mordecai. Oh, and you might be confused what the rage meter is. It's actually the superpower meter. I don't know why, I kind of just like calling it the superpower meter. But looking back at the game, alongside his pretty overpowered passive skill, Muscle Man has a pretty good active skill as well. It hits every character on the opposing team for a pretty decent amount of damage, and then also poisons them for extra damage. It's a very similar, but in my opinion, a better version of Mordecai's, since it's a guaranteed hit on all 3 opponents. But moving down to floor 7, this one's a pretty important one, because one introduces the ricochet ball, maybe the most deadly modifier there is, because if you didn't know, the normal ball bounces off the walls a couple of times, but eventually it'll explode if it hits it too many times. But the thing about the ricochet ball is that it never explodes, and it'll literally go on forever. So like you just saw on the screen, if you miss time a block, you can take an insane amount of damage if the ball keeps bouncing back and forth. We actually kind of got off easy there, and Skip survived, and I was able to get down a shield, making my chances at winning this a lot safer. And winning this floor specifically was very important, since it was the 7th game we'd win in a row, meaning after we defeated all of the opponents, we unlocked our 5th achievement, which was getting 7 victories in a row. And it's good that we got it early on, because the later stages gradually get harder. The next 2 floors, being floors 8 and floor 9, were all beaten very easily, as they didn't have the ricochet ball, and I could just strategically use Skips's and Muscle Man's powers over and over again. The 10th floor was pretty interesting, because one, it had my least favorite modifier, which was the portals that you can see on the top middle and bottom middle, and they work exactly how you think they work. The yellow portal would teleport the ball to the other yellow portal if it goes through it, and the same thing goes for the top 2 portals as well. And I don't know what it is about this modifier, but it seemed like I was always getting unlucky with it. But even so, the Muscle Man and Skip's combo was able to prevail, which leads into our first cutscene since the beginning of the game, basically showing a bunch of screens with our team progressing through the levels, and someone whispers from the right that they don't care how we did it, but they don't want our guests to know that we're here. And you'd assume this guest is Pops, but then Pops seems to appear and talks about how we couldn't prove ourselves as a team all of those years back, and that we wouldn't be a problem to defeat. And even more importantly, we got the 6th achievement, which was reaching the 11th floor, and like you just saw there, we unlocked Benson for our team. And Benson is actually the 3rd and final character that we wanted to add to our team. You can see that his damage stat is pretty high compared to his blocking and health stat, and because of this, Mordecai gets replaced by him. Muscle Man still stays as the team leader, and we still of course keep Skips on the team as well. And although I only mentioned Benson's damage as our factor for adding him onto the team, he actually has something much more important within his superpower, but unfortunately I wasn't able to actually use it on this level, though I will mention it as soon as I get a chance to use it. Oh, and something more interesting, floor 11 actually had 2 modifiers. One was the ricochet ball, which you saw just annihilated the other team, and the other one was the barriers in the middle, and we'd pretty easily descended down to the 12th floor. Here we had a pretty rough start because Benson took a hit directly to the face and nearly lost half of his health, mainly because his health pool is very low since all of his points are in damage. But once again, using Skips' ability, I was able to get a shield on him, and right after I used the passing technique and got Benson's ability and landed a great. And his ability is where the magic happens. Basically, it hits every character on the screen, including your characters besides Benson, and on top of that, it gets rid of everyone's stockpiled rage. And at face value, this might seem kind of bad since it hits our own teammates and takes their rage away as well, but it actually ends up working out in our favor because the opponents usually take a lot longer to fill up their rage meter, so we're able to use the abilities of Skips and Muscle Man, basically already making use of their rage, and then Benson comes in wiping out all the rage of the opponents that they've been building up. And even if we lose a lot of rage on one of our characters, since we have Muscle Man as our team leader, we build it up very quickly. And that's kind of where the trifecta comes in. Muscle Man is sort of a support in the rage category, Skips is a support in the defensive barriers, and Benson is our main damage dealer, with of course help from Muscle Man's superpower as well. And you might be curious what the opponent's superpowers look like, and we actually got to see one here, and this opponent's superpower was basically the same thing as Mordecai's was. And so through playing the game, I realized that all of the opponents have the exact same abilities as we do. Like that guy had Mordecai's, but they also have a character like Skips that can give him shields. So we definitely have to be careful that we didn't let them get their powers off, otherwise things can get chaotic pretty quickly. But nevertheless, we made it all the way to floor 15, where you can see that the opponents now have team buffs as well. Like ours, where our rage meter fills up faster, this team, their leader makes it to where they all start with 1 shield at the beginning of the match. And if you're curious, that's actually what happens when you make Skips your team leader as well. And though that's a pretty good ability to have to start off, I believe that Muscle Man's is just way better because we can pretty quickly get Skips' shields down with the Muscle Man's ability, and his ability in particular carries out throughout the entire match, while the starting shield only is there for the start. But focusing on the match, this level was actually getting a little scary because Skips had taken a pretty decent amount of damage, and Skips is actually the worst character to lose since his shields are extremely important to have all throughout the match. But unfortunately, after some pretty decent moves by the opponents, we'd lost Skips. But I was also able to even the score by getting an awesome on Benson's super attack and taking out one of the opponents as well, making it a 2v2, which was mostly in our favor since one, we had the shield on Benson, and we also had Benson's ability to sap away their rage. So eventually, after one final attack from Benson's ability, I was able to take out the last opponent, beating floor 15, with it also unlocking the achievement for performing 50 special attacks. The next several levels, there isn't anything really special going on because we kind of just spammed the same strategy over and over again without unlocking any new characters or achievements. The opponents for the most part were also all that we'd seen before. Well, at least up until we got down to floor 20, where we saw this robot thing as their leader, and the robot actually mentions that this is the last floor. And I'm not gonna lie, I did spoil a little bit because at the beginning of the game it tells you that there's 20 floors, but you'll quickly see what I meant by 30 floors. But for now, we had a problem because the robot had landed a great on its superpower and dealt 600 damage to each of our characters, taking out Muscle Man and getting the other two extremely low. Thankfully, I was able to land a great on Skips and get 2 shields on both of the characters, but then Skips' shield was quickly taken down when I used Benson's ability. And at this point, it was basically anyone's game because the opponents were playing pretty well and we had basically the same amount of health. But like I've mentioned many times, Skips' ability is the most important one, mainly for instances like this, where even in in the most dire of situations, it gives you a decent chance. And using Benson's Red Rage, we took out one more opponent, leaving the robot for last. And the rebound barrier here actually came in clutch because the robot ended up destroying himself. And we're thrown into this cutscene where the screen tells us that we did splendid and we're able to go back to our jolly good city. But everyone's very disappointed that they slept 1,000 years for this because they didn't even get a prize. But Mordecai is quick to remind us what had happened 1,000 years ago. And we kind of get the full story of the chaos from that day, mentioning that everyone had lost their temper and in that state had left Pops behind. But as they were walking away, they saw a beam of light shoot down, and when they went back to Pops, they saw a lollipop that said the year 3015, which explains how they knew to freeze themselves for 1,000 years. And right after, Rigby actually posed a pretty decent question asking where Pops could be. And we transitioned to a slide of Skips saying that his scans show that there are even more floors underneath and that he's hacking the system to get the floors moving. But someone slightly mentions that Skips could be wrong, but this is quickly disproven because we see Pops crying into this weird chamber thing where he's being forced to watch sad moments of his life to get the tears out of him. So for now, we can only assume that his tears are some sort of energy source, but it hasn't exactly been mentioned what the tears are for. So for now, we move on, unlocking another achievement, which was reaching the 21st floor. And again, for the next several floors, nothing really changes. We make use of the same abilities and kind of just power through all the way up to floor 27. But floor 28, things change up a little bit. And this is due to a couple of annoying modifiers. One of which was of course the portals that I don't really like. There was also the unpredictable speed wall, which would either slow down or speed up the dodgeball. But there's usually so much going on that you can't really pay attention to it. And the last thing you might have just seen there is this thing in the middle where if you try to throw the dodgeball over it, it'll catch the ball instead of going to the opponent's side, and then it'll just shoot the ball in a random direction. So a lot of RNG goes into that thing. And slowly as the level went on, my health on my characters was starting to dwindle, but the same went for the opponents as well. And things kind of took a turn when I threw the ball with Benson and it went through the red portal on the top right and came through the bottom left and hit Skips, taking him down, meaning we couldn't get any more shields. But things were seeming fine as we had two of our abilities ready, so I used the one with Muscle Man, but then this robot got an insane off the wall shot onto Muscle Man, taking him down, which now left me at a 2-1 deficit. So I immediately went for Benson's ability, which I thought would take out the robot, but it left him with a sliver of health. But thankfully he was still being affected by Muscle Man's poison, so he ended up dying eventually. And now it was just me and this one other opponent. And although I'd lost the shield right here, things were still looking good as I was just about to use my ability and the opponent didn't have much health left. But this again didn't take him down, leaving him with only a little bit of health. And then he hits me with this insane shot going from portal to portal, not even letting me block it, meaning we had lost in a round for the first time. And like I mentioned, this sends you back one floor, so I had to go back to floor 27. And we'd beaten floor 27 before, so I thought it'd be pretty easy. But then I somehow let the robot get his superpower ability, and as all my characters were pretty low health and the robot hit an awesome on his power bar, all three of my characters got taken out at once, meaning that I'd now been sent back up to floor 26. So things were looking pretty bad. But after these two losses, I did end up locking in a little bit, pretty easily defeating floor 26, and then also the same with floor 27, meaning I'd made it back up to floor 28. And this time we got into the same 2v2 predicament, but this time the opponents had much less health and they just destroyed one of their own players. And even better, the opponent left was the defensive one, meaning that his superpower ability only gave himself a shield, so I wouldn't have to worry about my characters suddenly getting one-shotted. And eventually, after using Muscle Man's ability, we were able to take down the last opponent, successfully moving down to floor 29, which by the look of the layout you can probably tell went much better. And as we destroyed the last character, it meant that we were now approaching the last floor. But before that, we transitioned into one more cutscene where we see a side-by-side of Pops crying in the present and the past, alongside some power charge that had reached 95%. But even crazier, we're shown that there's actually two different Pops in the game. One is the normal present Pops, and the other one with the bubble around his head is known as Future Pops. And Future Pops was the one that had brought present Pops into the future. And it seemed that we were able to get a hold of Pops, but then the screen turned red as Future Pops walked in, which could only mean one thing, that on floor 30 we're facing Future Pops. And remember when I said my mind was boggled? Well, this wasn't the thing that boggled my mind, and you'll quickly see what I mean as we reach the end of this battle, which the first two opponents that weren't Future Pops got easily taken out, leaving Future Pops by himself, who has a pretty insane amount of health. But a 3 against 1 even for him was pretty difficult, so eventually we dealt enough damage damage to take him down, but he was still standing, and Benson called out to him, which in his tired state, Future Pops says that he's trying to resist and he needs our help, meaning that Future Pops apparently was being controlled by something, and this was what boggled my mind, because as a red ghost spirit entered into Future Pops, and the possessed Pops started talking about his creator betraying him, which all made sense when we learned that the true master behind all this was the dodgeball. And I'm not joking, it's literally the dodgeball that we practiced with at the beginning of the video. And apparently Pops' tears had fallen onto the dodgeball and somehow powered him, making it sentient. And this was where the final battle began. And this battle is actually pretty tough because Pops has this shield in front of him, making him basically invulnerable from attacks head on. So like you just saw there, you have to try to hit a bounce shot off the back. And after dealing enough damage to him, he'll enter the super powered state where if you throw the ball at him head on, he'll supercharge the ball, so you have to block, grab the ball, and then hit Pops with it, which puts them in this vulnerable state where you can just constantly throw the ball at him, dealing some consistent damage. And after a while, he gets his shield back, and this was also where my luck kinda ran out, because for some reason, I just couldn't get a good shot on him from the back. And eventually, Skips ended up dying, meaning no more shields for me, and it was Benson versus Pops. And well, I kinda sold and accidentally eliminated myself. And though this was pretty bad, there was still some good news. One, we'd got an achievement where we had to hit an enemy 20 times from behind, and two, you actually don't get sent back a floor from floor 30. So we're able to get into the same exact match instantly. And this time I knew it was absolutely important that I kept Muscle Man alive, because using his attack, since it hits every opponent, we aren't forced to rely on the bank shots to deal damage. Now Benson of course could have done the same thing as well, but since he dealt damage to Skips and we needed Skips for the shield, this wasn't a viable strategy for the last round. But this time with Muscle Man, it was going perfectly, because I quickly got Pops into a super powered state, meaning he'd superpower the dodgeball and then we'd get him down into the vulnerable state again. And eventually he only had a sliver of health left. And so using Muscle Man, we threw the ball at him, and with one last counter attack from Skips, we took down Future Pops and the dodgeball. And it seemed like we'd freed Future Pops from the dodgeball's clutches, and everyone was quick to apologize to him for ruining Teamwork Day. But at the same time, it seemed like the place was falling apart. And though he couldn't stop this destruction, Future Pops did suggest that he could channel enough power to send everyone back to the present, aka 2015. And just like that, we got the achievement for rescuing Pops and the achievement for unlocking all the main characters. And better yet, we made it to 2015, to the day where everything started, where everyone started acting extremely polite to each other. And better for us, we unlocked Future Pops as a playable character. And though we'd beaten the main story of the game, we actually still haven't fully 100%ed it. And you might be wondering what's left, and it's mainly 3 achievements, and they're 3 pretty time consuming ones. The easiest of the 3 is we have to win 50 matches in total, and that one we'll kind of just get while going for the other 2, which one of the other 2 is unlocking the other 6 characters in the game. And these characters aren't any regular show characters, but they're actually the NPCs that we've been playing against all along. And every about 5 to 6 battles in the arcade, we unlock a new character, which meant that we'd have to play about 30 more battles to actually get everything. So along the way, we did get the win 50 matches, and after tediously doing another 30 battles in the arcade mode, we finally got the achievement of unlocking every single character in the game, which left us to our very final achievement, which was getting one character to max level. And for some reason, you can't level up your characters in arcade, because for some reason they're automatically just max level in it, so we have to start the story mode once again. And the things needed to level up characters are just some tedious things like counter attacks and blocks. And eventually, after battling through to the 12th floor, I had finally gotten Skips to max level, meaning we'd gotten the final achievement and truly 100%ed regular show Grudge Ball into the Chaos Sphere. And that's basically the end of the video. So let me know what you thought about the game in the comments. Okay, bye bye.